Title: The Lost Broadcast. Chapter 1. The Static Signal. It was supposed to be just another night shift at the radio station. Evan Burke, a late-night DJ at a small-town station, prided himself on keeping listeners entertained with obscure tracks and eerie midnight stories. He found comfort in the solitude of the night, where shadows felt like silent companions and the darkness seemed to listen more closely than people ever did. His fascination with the unknown wasn't just professionally, had always been drawn to things that couldn't be easily explained. The town of Willow's End wasn't exactly bustling, but the darkness had its own charm until the night the static started. At exactly 2:13 a.m., during one of Evan's usual broadcasts, the radio equipment crackled violently. His heart gave a slight jolt, the sudden burst of static slicing through the familiar rhythm of his voice like an invisible blade. The studio lights flickered momentarily, casting brief, unsettling shadows on the walls that seemed to shift even after the lights stabilized. The signal dipped into pure static for a few seconds before a distorted voice whispered something unintelligible. Evan noticed faint background noises layered beneath the statica, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against glass, and what sounded eerily like distant, muffled breathing. The sounds seemed to grow louder the longer he listened, as if whatever was making them had become aware of his attention. Evan, thinking it was just a technical glitch, shrugged it off. But then it happened again the next night. And the next? Each time, the static grew longer, and the whispers clearer. Chapter 2. The Message. Curiosity got the better of Evan. He decided to record the static and analyze it after his shift. Slowing down the audio revealed something chilling. A faint, distorted voice repeatedly saying, "Can you hear me? Help me. Trapped. Willow's End." Evan's heart raced. Was it a prank? A pirate radio signal? But the more he listened, the more he noticed something unsettling. The voice wasn't just distorted. It sounded wrong, as if it came from somewhere it didn't belong. There was an unnatural cadence, with syllables stretching and collapsing unnervingly, like the voice was struggling to mimic human speech. Determined to find answers, Evan traced the source of the interference. The signal seemed strongest when he was near the old, abandoned Willow Creek Mental Asylum, a place shrouded in urban legends and ghost stories. Most people avoided it, but Evan was never one to back down from a mystery. Chapter 3. The Asylum. The asylum was a crumbling relic on the outskirts of town, shrouded in a perpetual mist that never seemed to lift. The iron gate hung askew, creaking softly even without wind. As Evan stepped inside, the air grew dense, filled with a faint metallic tang, the kind that clung to old blood and rust. Faint echoes of long-forgotten screams seemed embedded in the crumbling walls. Whispers slithered through the corridors, too faint to understand but impossible to ignore, like the building itself was trying to speak. Armed with a flashlight and his portable radio equipment, Evan ventured inside. The deeper he went, the stronger the static grew, buzzing like a swarm of invisible insects. In the old control room, he found an ancient radio transmitter, dusty but surprisingly intact. As he powered it on, the room grew colder, and the static morphed into crystal-clear voices. But they weren't just voices, they were screams. "Don't listen to him. He lies. He's here." Evan froze. The voices weren't coming from the transmitter. They were inside the room. Chapter 4. The Entity. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him with a force that rattled the rusted hinges. Evan spun around, his breath visible in the freezing air. Shadows crept along the edges of the room, shifting and pulsing as if alive. A faint scratching noise echoed from the walls, growing louder until it sounded like claws scraping against bone. From the shadows emerged a figure, tall, thin, with distorted, shifting features, as if reality itself couldn't decide what it looked like. The entity spoke without moving its mouth, its words bleeding directly into Evan's mind. "You found me. Now you can't leave." Evan realized too late that the static wasn't a cry for help. It was a trap, meticulously set with the lure of curiosity and the promise of answers. The entity had been using the signal to lure someone, anyone, foolish enough to follow it. As Evan's vision darkened, the last thing he heard was the faint echo of his own voice, but distorted, like it was being played back from a distant place where he no longer existed. The next morning, Evan's car was found parked outside the asylum. His radio equipment was missing, and there was no sign of him. Chapter 5. The Lost Broadcast. Weeks later, Evan's station accidentally aired a strange broadcast during a routine playlist. It started with static, then Evan's voice, distorted and hollow. "This is Evan Burke. I'm still here. Don't come looking for me. It's in the static. It's listening." Listeners reported feeling nauseous and disoriented after hearing the broadcast. Some claimed to hear whispers in their own homes, even after turning the radio off. Rumors spread that anyone who listened to the full broadcast experienced vivid nightmares of shadowy figures standing at the foot of their beds, whispering in voices that sounded suspiciously like Evan's. Some claimed their radios would turn on by themselves at 2:13 a.m., playing nothing but static and faint whispers calling their names. A few even reported seeing fleeting reflections of Evan's face in dark windows, mouth open in a silent scream. The station deleted the recording, but copies surfaced online. But be warned. If you find yourself hearing static with no clear source, or if your radio flickers to life at exactly 2:13 a.m., it might not just be a coincidence. It could be Evan, still trapped, still calling out or something else, using his voice to find you.